This research-based practice is an interrogation of the notion of a line and its subsequent role within the discipline of interior design. Firstly, I want to address that this practice understands a line to be in a constant state of construction, responding to the conditions of its immediate environments and bodies. Ultimately, a line generates an interiority by establishing territories to frame space. Elizabeth Gross depicts a territory as a tool to divide and organise chaos, to create a plane of composition on which to think and create. Guiding the research was a process of durational investigations that implemented the body as a tool to map the movement of a line. Furthermore, to explore the provocation of the apparatus's agency, I undertook an instructional process of marking a single line on a single page until the ink of a pen or printer ran out. The fabrication of the line was provisional to the output of the body or machine, revealing the variation in communication that both apparatuses generated. Furthermore, to explore the provocation of the apparatus's agency, I undertook an instructional process of marking a single line on a single page until the ink of a pen or printer ran out. The fabrication of the line was provisional to the output of the body or machine, revealing the variation in communication that both apparatuses generated. Susie Attawell's depiction of an interior to exist in a state of flow influenced the understanding of the role of a line to compose an arrangement that produces a temporary consistency that enables inhabitation. Furthering the research, I became curious to the role of a line as a fluid form to manufacture seemingly fixed territories. Consequently, researching the low tide line that constructs the political border of Australia, specifically located in Wadawurrung Country Areas Inlet. Every 6 hours and 12.5 minutes, the tide transitions from low to high, contracting and expanding with the agency of the lunar cycle. Each low lasts for approximately 20 minutes, yet is continuously evolving as the waves manipulate the threshold. Through a gathering of tidal data, I found that the low tide line is situated to exist in a 3.22 metre variant, from the highest to the lowest low, thus composing a border in motion. A practice of working with and from the environment was significant in these temporal tidal explorations. To frame the flow of the tide, walking functioned as a process to map its rhythm. The body ordered the chaos by framing the movement into numerical points. As each wave collided, a territory was assembled. 147 waves were framed, therefore 147 borders were established. I also conducted a material study of the ocean's water, which prompted a process of collecting and boiling water down to expose fragments of salt. The salt is similar to the constructs of a line, as it is a durable form but is constantly mutating with its immediate conditions. By examining the qualities of the tide, these interrogations frame its chaos, highlighting its situational behaviours that form the territory to be in a temporal spatial arrangement. This major research project proposes an artist residency, partnering with the Surf Coast Shire, and will be located at the Aries Inlet Lighthouse and its neighbouring cottage. The aim of the residency is to frame the constant state of flow which a line and an interior exists in. The lighthouse is a colonial tool of communication to navigate and correspond with ships that travel the dangerous coast. Since its construction in 1891, it has been a tourist attraction, where the lighthouse keepers would not only maintain the structure and analyse the weather, but would act as guides for visitors. Today, the lighthouse is still a beacon of communication and a highly visited location and meeting point. To signal the artist residency, a window-sized hole will expose the rotating light to the northern land side of the lighthouse. This gesture of light will be a beacon to those on land, much like it signals to passing ships. This was inspired by an old keeper that scratched a hole in the panelling of the tower so he could ensure the light was functional whilst he was at the. Furthermore, a steel frame will be added to each of the 8 windows of the lighthouse. Each framing device will replicate the horizon, with a divisional beam cutting the plane in half to order the chaos of the external sight lines. As the body steps vertically within the space, the entrapped chaotic shards of the exterior will be reordered and exposed to alternate compositions, thus experiencing a process of separation that affects a slowing down and enables an arrangement in a generalized exterior. A live sound work, counting the shifting tidal territories, will also echo through the lighthouse. The sound interiorizes the temporality of the political border, counting each wave to the shore. In collaboration with the CSIRO, an archival workstation of tidal data will be located in the adjacent cottage. The residency will generate a series of temporal interventions that work with the environment to frame the fluidity of territory.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
To intensify the conditional relationship of the tide, weather, and lunar cycle, salt blocks with the same thickness of the lighthouse walls will replace all windows in the cottage. The blocks have straight lines cut through them to create temporal linear paths that will transpose the light of the sun and the moon through the divisional cut to trace the conditions of the tide onto the interior surfaces. As the salt is exposed to the weather, it too will transition, eroding to construct fluid linear networks. A collection of tidal data will also be presented in the cottage, utilising the original timber beams that line the interior walls. A mapping of the tide's movement will be ingrained into the timber surfaces. One beam at a time will be removed from the walls and placed into the sand for 20 minutes at each low tide. As the wave transitions to form new borders, they will mark the timber with a water stain. The timber marker will then be returned to the cottage as a data point. Each fragment of timber will be placed against the structural frame of the cottage, revealing not only the movement of the tide, but transition the interiority to exist in a temporal state, generating a conversation between the interventions of tidal data and the provisions of the weather. Overall, this residency interiorizes the tide. It generates a series of temporal arrangements that frame and intensify the fluidity of the conditional constructs of the tidal territory. Ultimately, this research project has produced a process-driven practice of duration and temporality. It has revealed a way of working that focuses on the conditional relationships between the body and the movement of an interior.